The following is a Thorf TV production brought to you in cooperation with Jack Thorfinson. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to Sunday Evening Gun Chat. That relaxing time at MrHolster's ranch way up north near the Canadian border, where Mr. Holster talks about guns. Let's have a big round of applause for that relaxing YouTube personality, Mr. Holster. Oh my God, Jack. Relaxing? That guy's comatose. Matter of fact, if he didn't open his mouth, oh, Mr. Holster, hey! Howdy, Parge, yeah, it's me, Mr. Holster. We're going to talk about today this lovely CZ P-07. But before we get started, you can see I'm not in my normal area. I'm up in the shop because shot this yesterday quite a bit. And after I'm done with the show here, I'm going to clean it. Yeah. So that's why we're up here. Let's get the show started to the sunny slopes of long ago. If that doesn't heat you up and cool you down all at the same time. Yeah, let's get started with this. This is a first gen CZ P-07 Duty 9mm. So the current model's a little different than this. It's got more soap bar edged for concealed carry comfort. It has iron sights instead of these poly plastic sights, which are quite similar to Glock sights. And it has a removable back strap, of which, and let me premise this before I get started, whatever I say is based on my personal likes and dislikes, not really passing judgment or saying what is right or wrong. It's just what I like, and I try to reflect that when I do these things to let you know I don't like this because I don't, not because it's the wrong thing to have. It's just my own personal preference. So, get that out of the way. I don't care for removable back straps on guns. It just, I have no problem. 99% of the grips are perfectly suitable for me, grip frames. I like them. They work fine. I get used to them. And so, removing the back, it's just something else to go wrong for me. Something that's not necessary. And I really have not seen one yet that really has worked well on the guns I've had. So I'm not a fan of those. So this being the first generation without, when I saw this in the gun shop used, was just a selling feature to Mr. Holster, because I don't like removable back straps. It would be nice to have iron sights instead of these plastic sights like the second gen has, and it would be nice to have the soap bar edge. I will admit, nice features. This has a 16 round magazine. It's a 9mm with a 16 round mag. And it came with 2 magazines. These run about 35 bucks. I found them for $35, which is starting to get on the expensive side, but not bad. I say if you can get magazines for around $35 or down, then that's the basic price range on the inexpensive ones. Of course, Glock, there's the advantage to a Glock is you can find those magazines for around 20 bucks, and you can do that because, which is also a downfall for this gun, is because the parts and holsters, aftermarket parts, they're just everywhere for those because so many have been sold, and there's just such a big market of aftermarket, which is a good thing. Yeah, because it's cheap, makes the parts cheaper, and gives you lots of selection. And anytime you buy a CZ, you can forget that. You're not going to have a lot of choice on what you get. Not a lot of aftermarket items for these things, and the parts, you're going to be relying upon the importer for the parts. And I will say that their website's a lot better than it was a few years ago. You can actually go on there and find the parts on there, but I found that most of them weren't in stock. a lot of out-of-stock stuff there, where if I need a part for a Glock, I can just go to Brownells or Midway USA or my local gun shop, believe it or not, and pick them up. That would be the downside to a CZ. Now the upside, of course, are the low bore axis, because you've got this slide riding inside. The rails are on the inside of the frame, so the slide rides a little lower. And of course, the famed single action trigger pull on this is a really nice trigger pull. The double action is pretty much a conventional old 90s. Well, I say 90s because here in the US, that's what they went to, is a double action, single action trigger pull when they transitioned police officers from revolvers, or they went to the double action only. Those were about the two that were the most popular. And of course, Glock. There were a lot of Glock agencies out there, but not as much, I think, if you added up all the others, being the Beretta 92, the Smith & Wessons. You would find that there were more of those being used at police departments than Glocks in the day back then, on the transitional time period, end of the 80s, early 90s. Now I'm getting astray again, which MrHolster always does. We'll get back onto the gun here. This gun frame, and now we're talking about personal preferences, to me is right down about, it's about borderline. I can get my entire hand on the gun, and I like to have my entire hand on the gun so that I can put the magazine in and remove it without having to adjust my grip. So we're right down there on the very edge, but it's pretty nice. You've got a 3 3/4 inch barrel here. This is quite similar to a Glock 19 in size. I brought my Glock 19 up. Yeah, up with me here in the upper decks of the shop. And as you can see, it's pretty darn comparable. It's got a little less grip frame on it, but not by much, only because, and it looks identical, I know, but the bore axis is a little, well, actually, you know, it's more the trigger guard, maybe. Pretty darn close, so it's hard to say. Hard to call that as, it's pretty darn close to identical. I think it may be just a tad wider, though, at 1.46 inches in width. And this one has those plastic sights on the first gen, which are quite similar to the Glock type plastic sights. So I'll be replacing those as we go down the road. Interesting thing that this gun does have, it is a single action, double action gun, which means the, well, double action, single action would be more apt. The first trigger pull is a double action trigger pull, and then every trigger pull after that, once the slide is cycled, becomes single action. And this gun comes with a decocker. So you can decock it, which is a nice feature. It's quite similar to all the SIGs, 226, 220. And quite similar to one of the first, well, actually the first automatic I carried was a Walther P-88. Very nice gun. Quite similar to that. Difference, though, slightly in the trigger pull, and this is the thing that I don't like about this gun. The trigger pull on this is pulling at right around 3.5 pounds on the single action and over 10 pounds on the double action. So here's your double action, and then your slide cycles, and it's cocked in single action after that. Very nice, light single action trigger pull. I just don't like, there's a huge difference there. And I'll compare it to my SIG P-220, which is coming in at almost 5 pounds on the trigger pull. So that 1.5 pound difference going from the double action to the single action is a lot for me, to the point where I'm not too sure I like that. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I don't like it. That is why I'm going to put the safety on. It comes with the safety. There you go. Still in the bag. You put that safety on, take the decocker off, put the safety on, and then you've got more like the old style conventional CZ75, where you can carry it cocked and locked like a 1911. Now at that point, the trigger pull on this will be all the same to me, and I'll be much more comfortable with that and using it as a carry weapon. Or should I say firearm? Carry firearm. The decocker, of course, would be sadly missed, but not a big deal because you don't need to decock it. You either have it cocked and loaded, cocked and locked, or you have it empty. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to swap this out. I'm going to swap this out and play with it with that on there. Shot this yesterday quite a bit with my stepson, and very, very nice, accurate gun. My stepson, who is 15 years old, I've never even let him fire any of my single action, double action guns. I have not gone there with him yet. So this was the first one that he fired, and the first magazine, he had a grouping that was about this wide and this tall. The second magazine, once he got a hang of that, he had it in a hole that was smaller than 3 fingers across. So I'm going to judge that as no more than 3-inch hole. At 45 feet, I'd say that was pretty good. That was pretty good, and he could do that because that trigger pull is so light and the gun is accurate. Very, very accurate. Very nice shooting gun. Now, do I want to carry it like that? No, I don't think so. I don't think I have a problem with carrying it if I take the decocker off and each trigger pull is the same, but I don't like that huge difference between the initial trigger pull at around 11 pounds and the second trigger pull that's coming in around 3.5 pounds. And I know it sounds funny, but it is a big difference to me than my SIG P220. That 1.5 to 2 pound difference is a big difference. It's a big difference. This trigger pull is so light after the initial trigger pull, it throws me off my game. Much more so than the SIG. The SIG is not a big deal. I will say, however, I have not been carrying that SIG, and I haven't carried a single action, double action variant gun since that Walther P-88. Of course, you could count I had that H&K P9S that I carried after the Walther P-88. And that's really more like this because you had an option on that gun to carry it in single action. The first shot single action. So I'm going to say I really haven't seriously carried it since then, and that we're talking back to 1990, which is a few years ago. Yeah, 27 years ago since I carried a gun that was single action, double action. After that time, after the H&K P9S, and I'll be willing to throw that in with the single action, double action, I guess. But after that, everything I've carried, each trigger pull's been the same. Be it a 1911 or a Beretta 92D, Smith & Wesson 4006 double action only. A lot of double action only guns back in the 90s. and I've just gotten to the point where I like each trigger pull the same. I don't want to train for the first trigger pull and then train for the second trigger pull. I think there's going to be enough going on right when that happens. If you need to pull the trigger twice, there's enough going on there that maybe the first trigger pull should be like the second trigger pull. But that's just me, says I. So I'm going to be switching this out to the safety version so I can use it cocked and locked. And there's the start of what my series of reviews on this CZ75 Duty 9mm. A very nice gun, very accurate. And you know, me being an old guy, I'd much prefer having the 75 compact with a steel frame. But This was there in the gun shop used, and I couldn't resist, and I'm glad I got it. I don't think the prior owner had put 100 rounds to this. Matter of fact, I find it highly doubtful, because the magazines were never taken apart, I'm pretty sure, and they weren't real dirty inside. And judging by the wear on the gun when I took it all apart on the slide and things, it had not been used much. So there you go, pards. There's your Sunday evening gun chat. A little bit of talk about a very nice CZ75. And of course the CZ75s, once again, all the CZ guns, for me, very hard to come by up here, way up north near the Canadian border. Not very many gun shops have them in there. It's a rare occasion to find a new or used one. I used one, very rare occasion. And I've always felt these are very, very nicely designed, accurate guns. Very little recoil due to that low bore axis sitting down inside that frame. And I'm going to put a link to a couple of my videos here and on the end of this program on some of the other CZ variants I have, the Tag Folio guns. I'll put that on there. I've always really liked them, but the one downfall I've always felt they had is support. Manufacturer being a long ways from here, and the parts being restricted to really acquiring them through the importer, and their system not really being set up for post-sales. Yeah, pretty much they're selling the guns and doing very little beyond that unless they really have to. But I see that by their website they're trying to make a conscious effort to provide those things. And that's one of the things I've always been concerned about in buying guns like this. And the Canic, for instance, is supposed to be a very fine gun. I have yet to see one in a gun shop around here. And there you have the same thing. Coming out of Turkey, the availability of parts and service and the magazines become kind of hard to find sometimes, although I see the Canic magazines are getting far easier to find nowadays than they were originally when they first started bringing them in here. But there you go. That's the only hesitant thing I've had on this gun, or these CZs all along, is that support of parts and the availability. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you like my channel, I'd like you to subscribe, and as a little incentive to subscribing to my channel, I'm having a contest. It is called the American Gunfighter 5,000 sub giveaway, where you can win a $350 gift certificate to Brownells, and this is all you gotta do to get in my contest. Number one, you gotta be a subscriber. Yeah, that's the incentive to subscribe, is this contest. Number two, you got to like this video. And number three, in the comment section down below, just type in, "Nice CZ there, Mr. Holster." Yeah, it is. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you like my channel, please subscribe. Till next time, go out and stay safe.